everyone. Stephanie Rickett here, editorial director of Hotel News Now, back for another episode of Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast with your favorite data geeks. I'm here with Jan Freitag, national director of hospitality analytics at CoStar Group, and Isaac Collazo, vice president of analytics at STR. Hi, guys.
Hey, Steph.
Hey, Steph.
So in our last episode, I was out sick, but you guys talked about a couple interesting points that I just want to recap for the listeners. Early indicators that fall hotel performance here in the U.S. was looking pretty good after a softer summer, thanks to good group demand, some solid performance in top 25 cities. You were a little less certain maybe of a recession this year, and then you had a, dare I say it, fun and informative sidebar into your thoughts on artificial intelligence. So if any of our listeners missed that episode, I will link it in the story. But for this episode, I'm going to try to keep you guys on the rails, but we will talk about performance now that we're in the fourth quarter, forecast, recession, and all of that. But first, I want to ask your thoughts on the topic du jour, which of course is Choice Hotels International's pursuit of Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. However, instead of asking your thoughts on whether this is a good idea, will it happen, so on and so forth, I want to get some data insight. So tell me, what do you guys think a deal like this would mean for overall branded landscape of, say, economy to mid-scale hotels in the U.S. in general? Can it happen? What would it look like? What would those segments in particular look like? Isaac, you going to start us off?
Yes, I'm going to start us off. Again, can it happen? Of course it can. So, and again, is it good or bad? That's not for us to judge. I think it's an opportunity, right? So from a data perspective, here at STR, it gives us the license to rethink a couple of things. So should the Choice Wyndham be approved, we might want to rethink chain scales. That gives us that license, that opportunity to rethink that, because they are so focused in those two chain scales. They have such a dominance in those two chain scales that it may make them somewhat obsolete for the rest of the industry. So that's what some of the things we're thinking about. And literally immediately when we saw the press release come out from Choice, we already started all the analysis. So I can even tell you today that right now, 15 markets, both economy and mid-scale, would be really impacted by this merger, right? So we'd have to those 15 markets potentially would be dominated by those two, by the Choice and Wyndham brands. So again, it's a real opportunity for us. It's pretty exciting because we get to look at everything and go, hey, this would be fun.
What
so
if?
What if? And so again, I look at it as an opportunity, not as a problem, and nothing more than that. Going to, hey, this is going to be fun. We can figure this out.
Yeah, I think that you talk about the chain scale, and at STR CoStar, we have something called the class that includes the independent properties. So while on the surface, there seems to be this really, the branded house of 43 brands or something like that. I think H&N posted a super interesting infographics. The reality is that half the rooms in the economy sector are indeed unbranded, so it's the impact on the class of economy type properties is not as pronounced as Isaac says it is for the chain scale. There's a very distinct other way of looking at it to say, yeah, even if it happens, still half the rooms are not part of any brand.
I know, but as an ex-brander, I don't really care about those independent hotels. The only thing I care about those independent hotels is I can convert them to one of my brands, right? So for me, as a ex-Marriott, ex-IHG person, this does matter, and I don't care about those independents other as a development opportunity.
Yeah, it was interesting to read the Wyndham chairman yesterday on the earnings call talk about that 20 years ago, they were actually approaching Choice. And he said, well, we don't talk about that anymore, but that happened. So I think these conversations are ongoing, but it didn't happen then. It's not happening now. So, this may just be a theoretical exercise.
Right. It could happen.
It could.
That's what we thought with Starwood and Marriott. Remember, that wasn't.
Well, that's it. And it was funny at the time. Everybody said, well, what will this mean for the brands that are concentrated in some of these similar spots between Starwood and Marriott? And will X brand cease to exist? And will it be taken over by Y brand? And of course, that really didn't happen. And so, of course, you apply those same methods of conjecture to a potential deal like this one. So I was really interested to hear both of your take on what that would due to the data? Because of course we hear about it from other perspectives, but it's an interesting thought exercise.
Lots of fun, actually.
But here we are, and of course it's fun to have a big news headliner as we're moving through the year, a year that's been, a lot of ups and downs, but steady progression over the last couple months. Now we're solidly in the fourth quarter. Summer is over. Last time we sat down for an episode, you guys were ruminating on, well, summer was this, but fall is looking like this. Now that we are fully into it, group, business transient, performance and demand in cities, are those the big powerhouses that are going to get us through the rest of the year?
Yes, they are. They are the powerhouses. We're seeing a shift from the non-top 25 into the top 25. We're seeing pretty darn good occupancies and ADR growth, especially since September. We've seen ADR return because, summer ADR was really low. It was like 2.2% on the for the quarter, but it was low, right? So now we are getting back that pricing power, but it's also because we're getting more of the traditional business traveler back, more of the convention traveler. So I think that's what we're seeing at the moment. So it looks good, but caveat, next week's going to be scary, and not just because it's Halloween. Right.
We're recording this in late October. Next week is Halloween.
Right. And everyone's already forgotten because both Jan and I have been receiving messages. Why does next week seem so weak? And, there's not much on the books. It's because it's Halloween and it falls on a Tuesday, which really negates business and group travel because both parents want to be home for their children, and no meeting planner is going to plan any meetings next week because of that. So that's the part that will be the caveat. October is going to be it's been pretty good, but that's going to throw it because we're going to lose basically a week because of the holiday falling on a Tuesday. A year ago it was on a Monday, had less of an impact because people did stay home Monday and then they traveled Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This will be, again, a greater impact.
Well, there is indeed a group meeting that week. The ULI Fall Conference is in LA, which starts on the 30th. I'm on the Hotel Development Council, and they moved the meeting because we were supposed to have dinner on the 31st. And I guess the organizers got a lot of emails saying, that's probably not happening. So they moved it out to the 1st and the 2nd. But I'm very, very curious to see what traffic will be like on the show floor on the 31st. I'm not going to be there, but I'm just going to listen for it. Let's hope, Isaac, that meeting planners, yes, they're not booking that week, but let's hope they push it into this week.
Of course, yeah.
And then maybe into the following week.
Right, that makes sense. And we've been talking about that within my team, that it could be like bookend. We could have a very strong this week and then take the off next week and then have a very strong start to November. So we'll have to wait and see.
The September group data was very encouraging. We sold only 200,000 fewer group rooms than we did in September of 2019. And Isaac and I have a little side bet going. Is it possible that in October, we're actually selling more group rooms than we did in 2019, having the best group months ever? So stay tuned for that.
Well, that begs a question because now I'm going to say the word that I said last time we would never say again, of course, normalization. We talk about normalization a lot. Oh, no, you're booing me in the Halloween spirit of this episode.
Ooh.
Oh,
that was an ooh, not a boo.
So let me ask you guys this and explain this for the benefit of our listeners, maybe who might be newer to the industry since pandemic times. What in a normalized U.S. hotel operating environment should we be expecting to happen in the fourth quarter as we're moving into November, December in terms of, this is usually when business transient or group picks up or slows down or changes to what is a normal last 2 months of the year, and how is that different or the same this year?
I think you encapsulated. You really have to look at by weeks instead of months, right? So what happens is right after Labor Day, you start going toward a new peak. And the peak normally occurs just before Halloween. That's when occupancy gets back up to near 70% on a normal year. Thereafter, it's going to stay in the high 60s, but it'll begin trending down. And by the time we get to Thanksgiving, then it starts getting really close to bottoming out, which it does during the week of Christmas. And then on New Year's, you'll see a bump up. This year's New Year's, just heads up, will be a good New Year's again because it's still on a weekend. New Year's Eve is on Sunday. New Year's Day is Monday. So it still provides for a 3-day weekend. So that'll be good. Next year, not so good. So get ready for next year's not being great, but this year should be really good. So that's kind of how it goes. So we'll bottom out that last week of December, and then the climb will start all back into the first quarter as groups and meetings and everything starts back for the new year.
And it'll be very interesting to see if there is international inbound to New York, Boston, Washington for that Christmas time period. We've had in the past, pre-pandemic, obviously, a lot of inbound for shopping in December that has helped. The transient occupancy, which was not business travelers because those stayed further home, and not a lot of group meetings going on. But it's going to be interesting to see if the international traveler stays home or actually comes back.
And or if Americans stay home and or go overseas, because again, what we saw in
That's
September was
it.
a large increase in outbound travel. So
Which typically is peaking in summer months, right? But that
correct.
season extended this year, would you say?
Yes, it did. And again, maybe it had to do with fall breaks. Again, as things get back to normal, where people are kind of now going back to regular schools, session weeks and things, maybe that's what led that peak. Again, we didn't look at it by week in terms of the actual outbound side, but we did look at the month, and the month was really, really strong.
Maybe it was just Instagram envy that everybody saw their neighbors in or their friends in August being in Italy and saying, "Oh, I missed out. Let me go as well."
Let's go, and maybe it'll be less busy in Rome
Right.
in September.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
So let's unpack what's happening in top 25 cities. I think that's been a really interesting arc to look at over the last year, even to see at first the industry was afraid cities would never come back. And of course, like the leaves changing, everything always comes back, right? So, what are some of the city highlights? Las Vegas has been doing pretty well.
Yeah, Las Vegas is benefiting obviously from a very strong convention calendar, no doubt, right? But you still have pockets of weakness, right? San Francisco's still weak, Minneapolis is still weak, and they have it's weird. It's not every week that they're really down, but it just goes up and down, right? So, but overall, I think the story is it is the top 25 driving the US right now. And it's really interesting. And I'm going to go on a limb that it has a lot to do with business. And the reason I say that, Steph, is because if you look at the chain scales that we started the whole discussion about chain scales, but the top four chain scales, luxury, upper upscale, and upper mid scale, have actually sold more rooms this year than in the second or third quarter of 2019. And if you look at upscale and upper mid scale, which I think is the real bedrock for small and medium sized businesses, they've been selling more rooms. At least the upper mid scale has been selling more rooms than in 2019 since November of 21, and upscale basically since March of 22. So I think, and a lot of those properties are also in those top 25 markets. They're business type destinations, right? So they're again, they cater to that small and medium sized business.
Those SMEs, yeah.
Right. And so I think that's the story still. I think, again, people are going back. New York, obviously, we've all read about New York. And yes, the demand is there. Yes, hotels have been taken out of inventory for housing migrant workers, et cetera. But again, there's real demand there. You can see that demand growth. It's not the occupancy is not just because of the supply side, it's because also of demand. And so, but again, we're watching that on a weekly basis and writing about it on a weekly basis.
Yeah, the for the first 3 quarters, room demand in New York is up 9%. The occupancy, this is just September, was 88% at an average rate of just under $400, $392. That's the average. That means that there are a lot of people paying, $1,200.
Back up. That occupancy you said was 88% in September?
87.8% in September.
Wow.
Yeah. So very, very healthy. Now, Isaac mentioned an interesting point, right? So we count 16,000 rooms that are taken out of the greater, this is the MSA, the larger market, out of inventory to house the unhoused migrants and refugees. You add to that running an Airbnb in New York City is now so much harder because you basically have to live there and you can't lock off any rooms. And if we follow our friend Jamie Lane from AirDNA, he's suggesting that a lot of the short-term Airbnb available rooms are now being moved into longer-term inventory. Now, you still have 9,000 rooms in construction, so that's going to come. But overall, I think that builds an environment where if you have demand continue to increase with healthy group, maybe some more corporate transient, and of course ongoing leisure, but you have fewer rooms, there could be continued pricing power in the city.
I think there is. I'm happy to be in the city in right after Thanksgiving, and you should see the prices. And again, that's Christmas in New York, which again, we know it's not a surprise, right? We didn't forget about this. We just have to be there. But the prices are definitely on the high end, and it makes sense because again, the demand will be there for Christmas in New York, as you know, the people are getting back again to their normal habits. And I think the other thing, just Steph, as you look at all the data, right, we've been seeing that, TSA airport screenings in the third quarter were 2% higher than the third quarter of 2019. So again, as we think about the future and think about this recession, there again, I don't see it right now. I mean, I see everything continuing. And last week in Atlanta, I happened to be flying through Atlanta last week. Something was going on Friday, but they were reporting huge lines Friday morning at the airport, and they were unprepared. And the same thing, I happened to be in Denver, and I had never seen this. Like, what is going on?
That always happens in Denver.
I guess so. I know Denver because of all the construction. Yeah, okay, let's leave it. But Atlanta was surprising because it made the news, right? It doesn't make the news in Atlanta because the airport's pretty busy all the time, but it actually made the evening news about there was craziness at the airport that day. And so again, I think people are out there, they're going to be traveling. Again, top 25 are desirable destinations, right? These are the cities that people want to visit. They say they haven't visited in a while. So I think you're going to continue to see them come back to normal. They're still below where they were in 2019, but they're getting closer and closer to their 2019 demand levels.
And I think that's a very, very important thing to call out. For example, Boston RevPAR September is up 7.7%. Washington, D.C. RevPAR is up almost 15%. But that does not mean that we're back to 19. This is just year over year. The comps are pretty easy for those larger meeting corporate transient driven markets. But 2019 is still a little far off.
Right. And again, it's good. It'll get there.
The big public companies in their third quarter earnings calls all have talked about so far that still so much opportunity and pent-up demand for large corporate groups. So of course, those small and medium-sized events have been bread and butter all along, but they've said that 2024 is going to be the year that the giant corporate groups are unleashed. Are cities ready for it?
I believe so. Yeah, I think they're ready. I think everyone's ready for it. Everyone just wants things. Again, lack of a better word, wish we could get a better, just to be back to normal, right? We just want to, but again, nothing is, right? So right now in the whole geopolitical sphere, we're dealing with other things that we didn't expect to deal with a year ago, right? So again, ongoing war in Ukraine, now of course the conflict in Israel and the Gaza Strip. So I mean, there's still always going to be something that's going to give us worry about the future, but I think we're just trying to get, from a demand standpoint, back to those normal patterns.
So technical recession starting this year?
No.
I mean, they'd only have one quarter to do it.
I know. And, I wrote down some notes on this because I just, again, we're about to release our forecast. So for our listeners, you'll see no real change for our 2023 forecast, right? It's a slight upgrade, but it's really just because the third quarter actually came in better than what we expected. So that's just going to move it up. We did build in a recession, even though in my heart, I just don't see it, but we built it in just because it's the prudent thing to do. Plus, we're also using the GDP forecast, and all the data we're using is coming from Oxford Economics, who is still calling for this recession. 2024, you shouldn't expect anything different from what we released 2 months ago or a quarter ago. It looks pretty much, it's in line. We really don't have any more new information other than third quarter was better than we thought. And so really, I think by the time we get to January's release for the Alice conference, then we'll have a lot more insight on if this recession happened. But why do I think the recession's not going to happen? It's just the jobs are strong. 35% of the labor gains since March 2020 is in that professional sector. And that, to me, again, I've said this before in other podcasts, that's the sector that will utilize hotels for both business and leisure. Then if you look at unemployment for college educated, it's well below what it was in 2019. Layoffs are below where it was in 2019. And job growth or job openings are still above where they were in 2019. And then, but I know he's looking at me. I can see him looking at me right now. He's giving me those eyes going, yeah, but people are in debt. They're up debt and yes. And you know what? And I said this last time, there's $1 trillion in credit card debt. Oh, that's nominal. We didn't talk about real credit card debt. If you look at real credit card debt and adjusted for inflation, it's exactly what it was in 2019 in the second quarter. That's the latest data that's out. Delinquencies are below where they were in 2019, and the percent of loans, 90% plus delinquent is half of what it was in 2019. So tell me,
Isaac is giving you permission to put that trip on your credit card.
Exactly. I mean, it's like put it. I just don't. And again, the jobs that are being created are good jobs, right? Professionals, and so you would think unless layoffs, that's the thing to watch. Layoffs. If layoffs start increasing and it's in the professional side, corporate side, yes, then all bets are off and it's a different game. But we just don't expect that.
Jan, you want to.
He wants to fight me. He really does. He wants to tell me what my numbers are all wrong.
No, your numbers are correct. I would never fight your numbers. I just want to fight you on sentiment. So I have 3 comments on that. Number 1 is I'm a CoStar guy and I'm a loyal foot soldier in the house call this recession. So I'm like, okay, I'll go with that. And that is the underpinning of every single presentation that I'm giving. I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, our forecast is for a recession. And that's why RevPAR growth is somewhat muted. I think number 1. Number 2, I think we have the calendar in our favor because indeed, if you take the sort of general definition of a recession of 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline, we have 1 quarter this year and the other quarter next year. So it's not in 1 year. So we can still have what we've never had before, which is RevPAR growth in a recession, right? Positive this year, positive next year. And lastly, our head of capital markets, Chad's opinion on what drives the recession is the lack of credit availability and has continued in a higher for longer, continued interest rate environment. It's very, very hard to get anything done because it's so expensive to borrow anything. And I think corporations will start to curtail their spending, and that has implications up and down the chain scale. Now, to wrap this up, is it possible that we will be in a technical recession that will be announced by the NBER 2 years from now? Yes. Is it possible that the hotel industry is somewhat insulated because of everything that you're saying? Yes. So both of those things can be true. It may not be a hospitality recession, but we're still suggesting there's a slowing in the general economy.
I don't disagree with you either. That's the hard part. But again, I don't see a technical recession. I don't see the NBER coming out with that either, because again, we're not seeing that job decline that's really required for that. And you're not seeing the slowness. And yes, I do think for companies, what you said, the availability of credit, yes, that's real. I don't disagree with that. But I think for most consumers and the consumers that we care about, the people who stay at hotels, I don't think credit is an issue. I just don't. You don't see it in the numbers. They're not delinquent. They're not going to be delinquent because, again, they have the means, i.e. a job and savings. So I don't see that as being an issue for me.
So then tell me why
Tell me more.
Is the economy sector doing so poorly?
Wow. Again, that's a great question. So one of the things that I've been avoiding, and this has been something we've been thinking about a lot, and Jan, he asked in a fun way, but we've been talking about this for months now. It would be very easy for me to go down that path and say, yes, the people who cannot afford it are no longer traveling. I think that's too simple of an answer. I don't believe that's the real story of what's happening to the economy. So yesterday, I just started doing we've been working on this for months, but yesterday literally came up with an idea of why is it the 4 largest chain scales that are a hell of a lot more expensive are selling more rooms than ever before and have been so. We said that earlier in this podcast. I started thinking about, could the economy sector, could it be a composition issue? Because one thing we know for sure is
Let me just jump in. By largest, you mean economy?
No, I'm talking luxury, upper upscale.
So highest chain scale.
And
luxury, upper upscale, upper mid.
And they're selling more rooms than ever before. They're actually in good position, right? So why is it economy? Mid-scale is not doing that badly. It's only one, economy. So I started thinking about maybe we're just looking at this wrong. Maybe we need to look at the composition of it, because what we know is the supply has retreated from economy.
Mm-hmm.
The hypothesis I'm trying to prove, which is not proved yet, is could it be the better hotels that were in economy have moved into other chain scales? That's right. That's one hypothesis. And then going in, so we have a lot of work to do, but we started looking at, we know that 14% of the 2019's supply of economy hotels are now in a higher segment. So that was the work I did yesterday. Now it's a matter of what kind of impact and can we prove that? Again, this may be a rabbit hole. It may go nowhere. And at the end, we may say truly it is the lower end traveler that is not staying at economy hotels. But again, I don't think that's true. And I also believe there's other factors, including we've looked at transportation. We've heard from a lot of our clients that some of this could also be related to rents. Rental units are cheaper, so people are staying in apartments versus hotels, and we'll never be able to, that's the data we'll never be able to really reconcile. But we are going to look into it, and that's, I mean, I think it's a very complicated, it's not as easy as you can tell, because we've been trying to figure this out for months. But again, I don't think it's as easy as that simple. It's the economy. That's why people aren't staying at economy hotels. I don't think that's the answer.
But this is definitely something where we're both digging into the data, looking at it 12 different ways, and there's more to come. So maybe next month, we'll have a little bit more help.
And hopefully we'll have at least the hypothesis, either we'll accept the hypothesis or we'll say it's wrong. And especially when I'm working on this composition thing, because that's going to take a lot more time to kind of flush out.
And of course, we talk about the economy and all the factors involved right now, including inflation, interest rates, and so on. What kind of impact are you seeing on the transactions deal side of the market? Jan, you track these a lot. What are you seeing in terms of deal flow?
Crickets. So that's fair.
That was a meaningful pause. Yes,
exactly. In the higher for longer interest rate environment, it is very, very hard to get deals done in the third quarter. Still, I mean, if the transaction volume was there, I mean, we sold $6 billion worth of assets, but that's half of what it was a year ago. And we don't really see a catalyst for Q4 or Q1, honestly, for something to change materially until the Federal Reserve says, okay, we are now officially done raising rates, because there's still, if you check Bloomberg, some people are still suggesting, hey, we are not actually done. So once we get clear signal that this interest rates is what it is, and maybe we'll actually start decelerate, then I think we'll see more activity. So I think we continue to see select players do select deals. You saw Ryman Blackstone trading the JW in San Antonio. You saw in Mr. Sam Chang in New York City selling the triple branded Hilton property, took that off his portfolio. So there are still some deals getting done, but it's not at all with any velocity.
Right, which has been the case all year plus. So nothing really different there. How about before we close up with a fun topic that I want to talk to you about, how about pipeline under construction? We've heard, again, this has been kind of a hot week for public companies talking about their third quarters. And of course, these guys are talking about a lot of conversions, but also, a little bit more activity in terms of construction starts in the US. So what does the pipeline look like in terms of, particularly that under construction pipe and how things might change in the next 6 months?
Well, Steph, there's still a good number of hotels. It is down 6.3% from a year ago. It's under construction rooms, but it still is 146,000 rooms or 1,161 hotels that are under construction, right? So again, it's not like there's nothing under construction. There are a good number.
Yeah, the slide that I make about that, my headline on that slide is we're not building ballrooms anymore. I've used that exact same slide for the last, since 2019, arguably. Limited service is the name of the game. That's where the publicly traded companies put their effort. Developers like it, lenders like it, customers like it. So it's really, really hard to get a big box done. So you see some luxury and some upper upscale. Some stuff in Vegas is finally coming to fruition, the Fontainebleau specifically. But other than that, you're exactly right. It's limited service all the time.
And let me clarify the numbers. It's 53% of all under construction rooms are in the upscale and upper mid-scale. And in final planning, that number is 66%. That's what.
Mhm.
On the
Yeah.
final planning number, it's important to note that that number is ballooning. So
Yeah.
while the number of rooms in construction is decelerating, the final planning number is accelerating. It's 40% higher today than it was a year ago. And that's going to be interesting to watch because some of them may fall by the wayside, but some of them are just ready to go. And as soon as interest rate environment evens out, I think we will see a slew of starts. Will they all come in the next 18, 24 months? No, but I think there's definitely pent-up demand for new supply.
Right. I hadn't thought about that part of
Pent-up
the
development
interest
demand.
rate conundrum. Yes. So let's close by talking a little bit about travel. I love talking about travel with you both because you both do it a lot. And of course, you bring your particular areas of expertise and, dare I say, critique to your travels. So yeah, Isaac, you mentioned that you were in crowded airports recently. You were at Austin City Limits. Jan, you were at Disney World?
First time, got the
Yeah,
scars.
got
to
the
prove
mouth.
it.
Oh, so tell our listeners your impression of the Disney magic, Jan.
It is magic. So our boys are 5 and 7. We'd never been. I'm like, all right, let's just go all out. So we stayed on property at the Contemporary where the little monorail goes through. We had a room with the view of the fireworks. Huge credit to Disney. The crowd control, the line management is truly amazing. So if there are 3 different lines, one is the regular line, one is the Genie Plus line, and one is what's called the Lightning Link line, where you can literally just pay and say, here's $20 and I want to do this ride.
Take my cash.
So in addition to all the other money that you're spending, we wrote this thing called Tron, which is only like 90 seconds or 97 seconds long, but it shoots you from 0 to 55 miles an hour in like 4 seconds. And my 5-year-old loved all of that. So that was super fun to do that with him. So the crowd control, the hotel, the service, the staff, really that part is magic. The part as the guy who whips out the credit card, like their F&B charges they are not shy. Wow. I mean, I understand, that these things are expensive, but I was actually not quite ready for
How
the
much
sticker shop on the F&B.
So give us an average. So how much for an ice cream sundae?
Oh, so that's, I mean, those things we just had, let's grab a quick snack, family of 4, $67 later, just to sort of get a snack. The thing that sort of got me was this, they're the all-you-can-eat buffets. And of course, with a 5 and a 7-year-old, they have like, a grape and a cookie. And it's
there
like,
you just paid $45.
Yeah, exactly. So that part, I was just like, wow. But that should not take away from the really, truly amazing experience. And I think, as I said, it's a rite of passage. We did 2 days in Magic Kingdom. Do we have to go back there? I don't know. But Tron is truly, if you haven't been, try it. It's amazing.
And the wonderful hospitality just made it all worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, people are genuinely just very nice. I mean, they're very well trained. That's what Disney, hangs their hat on, their service delivery. And I thought it was outstanding.
That's great. Isaac, you, of course, were at yet another giant music festival, Austin City Limits. What's the hospitality situation down there?
It was incredible. So IHG actually has sponsored the VIP lounges and had a stage. So I kind of met up with a lot of my ex-IHG friends, which was great. And so, but you know me, I'm not going to stay in the VIP area. I was out in the pit to really experience it. So yeah, it was great. Yeah, were incredible. Foo Fighters were super cool. From the hospitality standpoint, we actually, unbeknownst to us, my friend makes all the arrangements. Him and his wife make all the dining arrangements. And 2 of the restaurants we picked, he didn't really realize that they were in Marriott hotels. And they were great restaurants. So we were at the Marriott Austin, the full service there, and then the JW Steakhouse, which is out of this world. So yeah, we were still in the hospitality scene. Obviously stayed with my friend and his wife because again, Chateau Pavelic is much better on the pocketbook than, a hotel during a major music festival. But it was great. So I think, and from what I can tell from the crowds, again, as I keep looking for these signs of recession, as I go to these bars, as I go to these restaurants, there was nothing in Austin that said recession. We did find a secret bar that's really cool. Tell me, we can talk about it next time. But you had
Then
to
it
know a
won't be a
code.
secret.
It
Even
was a
better.
code to get in. It was under a fence. You had to go downstairs before you got. It was a really awesome place. So yeah, we had a great time.
But just to pick up on that, Disney World during spring break, no sign of recession.
Or fall break, not spring break.
Sorry,
Yeah.
fall break. Yeah, no sign of
So
recession.
if those are our indicators, then I think the industry is doing pretty well. Isaac, Jan, as usual, thank you for a fun and fast-paced conversation that I really hope our listeners can follow. Now, one note, we've been getting some fan mail, so we may need to add a mailbag element to the show moving forward. If you have a question or comment for Isaac, Jan, or the podcast, you can send that to me, Stephanie Ricca. My email is sricca@hotelnewsnow.com, and we just may answer it on the air in a future episode. As usual, thank you guys. Have a great rest of your week.
See you, Steph.
Thanks, Steph.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Hotel News Now podcast network. This episode was recorded on October 26, 2023. It was produced and edited by Brian Roten. Subscribe to Tell Me More, a hospitality data podcast, and all of Hotel News Now's podcasts wherever you like to listen. Visit hotelnewsnow.com for industry news from around the world and to subscribe to our newsletters. Thank you.